This is a great question. So what you eat will, depend on the person and the state of their metabolism, their digestion, the kind of exercise they're going to jump into. But generally speaking, you want to have a protein and a carb about an hour to an hour and a half before your workout. You generally want to avoid having too much of a fatty meal or too much fat because it can slow down digestion and give you cramps while you're working out. I like to have an intra-workout drink, like coconut water and some orange juice and salt. So I'm constantly replenishing electrolytes. And then after your workout, you want to have a replenishing meal with some protein, carb, and fat. The macros will depend on the person and their goals and what they're used to, but I don't really like to wait that long after my workout. Of course, I wait till I'm in a rest and digest state out of my, sympathetic fight or flight stressed state. But I generally have it 30 minutes to an hour after my workout. This is a really good question, and you may not like my answer. So the pill completely depletes the very minerals and vitamins that you need to be fertile, and to build a healthy baby. So getting off the pill, you're going to have to spend some time replenishing your body fully just to get you ready and fertile. And then you're going to have to also spend some time replenishing and preparing your body for the pregnancy, because pregnancy is a very mineral and vitamin depleting state. So, have patience for the sake of you and your baby. The less time you wait, the less prepared your body is, the more complications can occur with you and the baby. And because calcium depletes magnesium, if you're taking calcium supplements, you're actively lowering your magnesium. And so calcium, it slows down our metabolism if we have too much. It causes calcification of the tissues if we have too much. When I do hair tissue mineral analysis tests, elevated calcium is basically associated with slow thyroid function. So, if you're concerned about getting calcium for your bones, just know that calcium is not the only thing that the bones are made of. Bones are made of calcium, potassium, magnesium, manganese, silica, iron, zinc, selenium, boron, phosphorus, sulfur, chromium. So it's not the only thing involved in bone formation and bone health. And magnesium is really what regulates calcium status. So it's required for vitamin D to work in all the steps of creation and activation, basically. So if you don't have magnesium, then you're not going to be getting enough calcium. That said, if you are someone that is very worried about their calcium status, it's very rare to be super low in calcium, but it can happen. Focus on eating high quality dairy. It's an excellent source of calcium, as well as fish with bones in it, like sardines, anchovies. You can have bone broth. Bone broth will have calcium. So will, soups made with bones and things like carcasses. Because ascorbic acid is only the outer shell of the vitamin C complex. So when we just take the outer shell, it's going to look to complete itself with the supply that we have in our body. So it's actually chelating or removing these things from us instead of giving them to us. Please check out my post. Do you think these have real vitamin C? It's maroon. It'll explain everything. So pyroluria is a clear sign of copper and iron dysregulation. There's underproduction of copper proteins, which means that there's dysfunction in red blood cell production, which creates cryptopyrroles, and then it creates the loss of zinc and B6. But to really address this issue, you have to address the underlying copper and iron dysregulation, not contribute to it more by taking zinc supplements and things like that. Best time I would say is definitely not while you're bleeding already, but also probably not during your luteal phase, because you already have a higher need for minerals and vitamins and carbohydrates. So probably in your follicular phase after your period. There are many factors that can contribute to birth defects, like chemical exposure, radiation exposure, mineral deficiencies, medications or certain injections. But the state of the mother during pregnancy is really what we can control as mothers. So that's why preparation and preparing for pregnancy is so important. It's such a depleting time. It's such a stressful time for the body that you have to be really good going into it. nutritionally and physically. And basically Down syndrome, the mother was a copper desert, so she had very, very, very little to support the pregnancy. I'm actually working on something super, super cool with the preconception PT around pregnancy, preconception, stuff like that. So stay tuned. You'll hear more about it very soon. So there are so many potential factors that can affect hair loss, but in short, a lot of the time it has to do with the body not feeling like it has enough energy to expend on it. So hair is expendable by the body. It's not essential. That's number one. It can also have a lot to do with high estrogen, and low energy and high estrogen go hand in hand usually as well. But I would need to know more about you, what you're eating, how you're living your life to really make recommendations on your hair. Sore boobs usually have to do with really high estrogen levels, so perhaps the workouts that you're doing are actually helping you detoxify estrogen and supporting your metabolism. So without knowing more about you, I couldn't say, but that's my guess. Unless they're coming from real whole foods, you're not going to get any of those kinds of recommendations from me. Actually, none of the ingredients in, a cake would be bad necessarily. Butter and eggs, they're amazing, metabolically supportive, especially if they're high quality, so pasture raised, grass fed. You guys know I'm not against sugar. I would just make sure it's organic because they usually make sugar from conventionally grown beets with glyphosate. And then the flour isn't even bad either. It's just, is it grown with pesticides and herbicides? So that's my take. It's pretty much a load of bull crap, but there is some merit to these statements, only in the, context of carnivore. So one of the reasons I don't like carnivore is because, most people that eat carnivore eat heavy muscle meat diets. They're not eating nose to tail. They're not getting enough collagen-rich foods that kind of balance out the inflammatory amino acids. Dairy is also an amazing way to balance these amino acids. So the muscle meats have a really high phosphorus ratio to calcium ratio. And phosphorus, when it's too high in our blood, it makes our blood acidic. So the body releases what's called parathyroid hormone to get calcium and release that into the blood to neutralize the blood and make it more basic. So that's really where it comes from. But no, in my opinion, dairy and meat are really part of a well-balanced and super healthy and nutritious diet. So candida is actually a naturally occurring fungus in the body. It's just been, when it becomes a problem, it's just been allowed to flourish and overgrow. So it can lead to yeast-like symptoms, yeast-like problems. I would not starve it like most practitioners tend to approach candida because it makes it worse. It makes it more angry, and candida lashes back pretty bad. And so at the end of the day, it's a metabolic issue pretty much. We might have iron overload that feeds candida, allows it to grow. So I would actually get my iron levels checked, probably get a full Monty iron panel to see what's going on. And it's a metabolic issue as well. So, your metabolism, when it's slow, bacteria get to flourish and grow in places that they really shouldn't and should actually be sterile. So I would be working on my overall metabolism with, iron involved, but as well as like what I'm eating, how I'm sleeping, moving. So 2 to 3 cups is kind of a big serving. That could be the issue. Do you eat other sheep's products and have the same issues? Do you eat other yogurt products and have the same issues? That's kind of where I would start looking. So high carb diets and plant-based diets are not mutually exclusive, but plant-based diets actually tend to push us more into an alkaline state, so a basic state. And that's not good either. Balance is key because then we can't digest food well. Yeah, sure, homemade desiccated beef liver capsules, that's nice. I would get on the root cause protocol. That is a clear copper deficiency. My question would be, do you wake up to pee? Do you wake up just like really hot because you're having a hot flash? Do you wake up because you're just laying awake and, you're just like super wide awake? Those would be my questions. How are you living your life during the day? All questions that I would need answered to help you out with this question. So unfortunately, I can't make generalizations on this because it's really going to be unique to you as a person. It's different for everybody. So you're going to need to really support your detoxification pathways. Eat well, eat frequently enough. Your estrogen is probably very high, which is what you're seeing come out of your tissues. That's why you're getting acne. Your unbound copper is probably pretty high, as well as your iron. So if you really want to see what's happening, you should get a hair tissue mineral analysis and a full Monty iron panel. But you're probably seeing things move a little bit right now. Let's get could be more of a structural issue or a result of poor movement patterns. So I would actually check out my friend Zach at True Strength. So getting your period back, you really have to help your body feel safe, both physically and mentally. So stress less, move less. Sometimes less movement is really required to get your period back, as well as eat more. It's totally normal. I mean, just because somebody doesn't look overweight doesn't mean they're not metabolically suffering. So, it sounds like if you're underweight, maybe you aren't eating enough and your metabolism is suffering. Nutrition during breastfeeding increases quite a bit, actually, even more so than when we're pregnant. I think the average is about 500 extra calories per day, but some women need even more than that, thousands of extra calories. You've basically gone from creating a human being to now being the milk factory for that human being. So your mineral and vitamin nutrient needs are going to go up. Like I mentioned before, I'm working on something super cool. Stay tuned. It can be. Some people it's really helpful, but others don't have to. So it really depends on you as a person and what works for you. Listen to them. Your body's telling you that it needs something. So I would honor those hunger cues. In my opinion, real whole foods are always the way to go. If you wanted to gain weight, though, then I would look at your caloric intake and your macros. Not necessarily, like everybody's needs are so different. But what are you eating with your protein? I would want to know what kind of carbohydrates, what kind of fats. If you're only eating protein, then yeah, it's probably not a good idea. I would check out my histamines post that I did recently. So yeah, I would. Remember that it's primarily fruit juice and that requires basically no insulin response. But there are other recipes, so it's not the only one. Check out the RCP manual. Probably. I mean, how do you feel? It can be. It's usually more of a liver problem, but, deficiencies come with that, and histamine also comes with deficiencies. So it's kind of like looking at the full picture, but I would look at liver. So I found that there's usually some kind of trauma or emotional aspect to an autoimmune disorder, but, it's pairing that with balancing your blood sugar is a really great place to start. So working on both of those at the same time. So the best way to prevent these is to figure out what's driving these. What are you eating? What supplements are you taking? What are your hygiene habits like? What kind of clothes do you wear? What kind of feminine products do you use? And so looking at all of these things and kind of doing a process of elimination and addressing it from there. It is a fungal overgrowth. It is candida. So, it's going to continue coming back unless you fix these things. The metabolism is very often involved. It is an iron chelator, but it's not, where I'd first go, it's not part of the root cause protocol, and there are far more effective ways to reduce iron. That would be a big heck no for me. Beans are not real food. Check out the post I did today, and then I have a post on foods with magnesium a bit far back. I'll post this on the next slide. Totally, but it's on a case-by-case basis, and it depends on the state of the person, the state of their metabolism, because everyone can't handle the same things. Everyone's different. So some things that I do usually recommend are beef liver, magnesium. Adding these in without foundations in place can sometimes make people feel worse. So it's really depends on the person. Yes, these can be helpful for UTIs, but you have to look at why you're getting them in the first place. It's usually a pelvic floor issue. I would recommend checking out my friend, the preconception PT. All cookware has its downsides, but you have to figure out what works for you, what's in your budget, etc., and really take care of them too. That's a huge piece of it. I personally like my ceramic and stainless steel. It can be a nice thing to incorporate, but it's not foundational, so I'd be focusing on other things before I add that in. And do remember it's a nightshade, so if you have any kind of reaction to those, that's something to keep in mind. I think 99% of them are a waste of money, and the only ones I really like are the spore-based ones, so the ones from Just Thrive or Megaspore. So, and it depends on you and what you need. So those are my thoughts. So unfortunately, she's probably already started in a malnourished state, but there's still time. So I would get her to start eating animal foods. The fat-soluble vitamins are going to be super important. They have more bioavailable forms of minerals and vitamins and things like that. These are really important for a healthy baby. They're really important for her health as well and recovering as well. People that don't prepare for pregnancy or start in a malnourished state also have more potential for postpartum issues. And liver could be a nice way. Liver especially would be basically it's nature's multivitamin. So starting there and getting some real nutrients in really fast would help. Best source of beef liver is beef liver. Just kidding. That's probably not what you're asking. You're probably asking where to get them. So yeah, I would get from your local butcher or farm if you have one nearby. You can also get desiccated. Desiccated, I have a bunch of brands and options listed in the approved products link in the link in my bio. Congratulations. I just did a post on this today. Check it out. Do less, say no more often, and start protecting your energy. Yes, I do. Feel free to reach out to me, lauren@innate-nutrition.com. So this is called cortisol belly. It could be the result of high stress or blood sugar dysregulation, which go hand in hand, as well as, maybe your body doesn't feel safe enough to let this belly fat go. The answer is not super simple. I need to know what you're doing during the day, what you're eating, what kind of exercise you're doing. Are you eating enough? These are all things I would have to look at to figure out why you might not be able to get this weight off. Check out my post titled, What Your Ferritin Levels Really Mean. I cannot tell you an exact dose. I would ask your doctor. I will personally be supplementing vitamin K during my pregnancy. And don't forget, I'm coming out with something really cool with a preconception PT very soon, so stay tuned. Nourish your body first. Most overweight people are actually starving for energy. So until you fix the underlying deficiencies, you're going to have a hard time losing weight. And you're going to have a hard time keeping it off. It could be that your body is fighting an infection, but without knowing more about you and your situation and the other markers, that's my guess. Yes, it can work amazingly for some people, but if you're estrogen dominant, if you're iron toxic, or PUFA saturated, so if you haven't done any work on any of these, then I wouldn't, because these three are what contribute to skin cancer. I have so many questions. Did you ovulate? Do you generally ovulate? How long is your typical cycle? What kind of stress were you under this month? What kind of stress were you under 3 months ago? If your cycle is a healthy length and you're ovulating, it could be a fluke, but if this pattern were to continue, then I would be concerned. So high quality cod liver oil is slightly different in my book because a really good one will have a high level of A and D vitamins in it. And some people just cannot tolerate beef liver or dairy. Because they're metabolically compromised. So in very rare cases, it may be helpful, but generally speaking, I stay the heck away from it. It's not necessarily from consuming too much salt. I would say you're probably losing too much salt. So, it's what kind of exercise are you doing? Is it super strenuous? Like, how much are you actually sweating? It can be indicative of extreme stress or a mineral imbalance. So, I wouldn't blame the salt. So a prolactinoma is a tumor in your pituitary gland in your brain that causes you to produce too much prolactin. Any tumor is basically the body not having enough energy to reproduce or regenerate correctly. So it goes for quantity over quality. That's number one. And then calcification. So it's usually a mass of calcified tissue. Calcification usually points to stress, major stress. And calcification tumors can manifest in different places in our body. So, sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. But at the end of the day, it is stress. And to kind of help it, you have to work on de-stressing. Are you talking about raw or cooked? Because if you eat them cooked, really well cooked in some butter or ghee or something like that once in a while, it's not an issue at all. But if you're eating them raw every meal, every day, I've had one before, and while it's the only non-hormonal sort of option for IUDs, it still poses its issues. All birth control forms have their own problems. Women with the IUD tend to have high unbound copper and very high estrogen in tissues, and so there's a whole healing process with that as well. If you decide to come off of it, it can also make people pretty psycho, I've seen. So it really depends if it's working for you. If it's working for you, that's great, but if you feel really strange on it, it might be something to think about talking to your doctor about. This is a sign of liver health, a sign of estrogen as well. Both are very tightly connected. If we have poor liver health, we're not able to detoxify estrogen, so it recirculates. So I would focus on getting your metabolism up, keeping your liver full of sugar so it can actually detoxify. Make sure you're pooping at least once a day and eating your raw carrot salad every day. Mold is no joke. It can really cause someone's health to do a 180, like they're fine one day and then the next day they're completely a train wreck. It's also a huge copper depleter, so you really have to get the mold taken care of wherever the source is coming from, replenish nutritionally so that you at least have some resilience and can continue to build it. Not necessarily. If we're hydrating well, our electrolytes are balanced, and we're getting the right fat-soluble vitamins, our skin will naturally be very hydrated. But that said, if you live in an environment that's very dry, like myself, an arid climate, you may need some support, especially in the winter months when it's super dry. You guys know I don't recommend either supplementally. I know you probably care a lot about your son, and that's why you're asking it, but I might not try to look at it this way. I try to look at it in a more positive way, like what can we do to build ourselves up? But that said, it all starts before pregnancy. You really have to do the state of the mother, so the health of the mother is going to impact the health of the baby. And if you're in a hypothyroid or hyperestrogenic state, if your metabolism is slow or suffering, if you're on medication or severely mineral depleted, it's kind of, you're starting a few steps behind the starting line rather than at the starting line with the baby's health. And so it's really important to prepare for these things. As I mentioned, I'm working on something super cool with the preconception PT that'll kind of go into how you can prepare for this stuff. So stay tuned. Halitosis is also known as bad breath. It usually happens when something in your microbiome is changing, whether that's for the good or for the worse. So I would keep an eye out to see what you might have changed recently in your diet or lifestyle that might be causing your gut to shift, which causes your oral microbiome to shift as well. Bitters are really nice. They're a nice way to, prime your stomach acid and help with digestion, but it's definitely a crutch. And so if you're not addressing the reason you have low stomach acid in the first place, yes, you might become dependent on them. A 2-year-old should poop at least once a day. So if they're not, that's something is wrong. So I'd get them checked out and potentially look at what they're eating during the day as well as their stress levels. This sounds like cholinergic urticaria. I would check out my histamine post. This sounds like cholinergic urticaria. I would check out my histamine post. This could be so many things. So, were you chewing your food? What did you eat? Were you in a rest and digest state? Were you eating behind the wheel or in front of a screen? Did you drink a lot of water with your meal? Otherwise, it could be your metabolism. You need good metabolism to have good digestion. So these are just some factors, but I'm just speculating. I would give dairy a try, as well as some fish. I would work on balancing my blood sugar and replenishing minerals.